We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom right here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. Of course, this is only one show that we have on our expanded network. On Tuesday, you can hear from one of our newest contributors, Lou Perez, every Tuesday. On Wednesday, of course, you have Brian McWilliams with his long-time running show, Mean Age Daydream. And on Thursday, you get another new contributor to Lions of Liberty, Brian Nichols with The Brian Nichols Show. And then on Friday, about every other week, you'll get our newest show with 3 or 4 of us from the group called Politics. That's tick like the blood-sucking insect. And not just on this feed can you get politics. You can get that on the exclusive politics feed, where we will have exclusive content there as well. So be sure to subscribe to both. All right, without any further delay, I do want to get to today's guest and introduce today's guest, because I think we're going to have a very important conversation. And my guest today is Ray Vahey. He is the founder and CEO of BitChute, which is a video sharing platform created to champion free expression and resist the increasing push for digital censorship. He's a software engineer by training. Ray launched BitChute in 2017 in response to the growing deplatforming and algorithmic suppression of mainstream tech platforms. Under his leadership, BitChute has grown into one of the most recognized platforms for censorship-resistant content, serving tens of millions of users monthly. Ray, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. And you have been a requested guest for quite some time here. Before the show even started on our YouTube channel here, a good friend of the show, Fergus Hodgkins, chimed in that he's very happy to see you on the show. So looking forward to talking with you. Before we get into talking about BitChute, other current events that are happening around privacy and censorship in today's world, every day it seems like there's another headline, another attack on our privacy. Before we get to that, my audience isn't familiar with you. If you could just give, some of your backstory, what brought you into this field?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a long-time supporter of the alternative media. I've thought for a long time, even before starting BitChute, that was a great force for good. And I didn't like the way that the mainstream media had been going for many years. There were a lot of problems with its reporting in terms of reporting on wars like the original Iraq War. They did that very badly. Things like the BBC not reporting on the child abuse scandals that were very big news in the UK. And I saw the alternative media as a real force for good that could solve that problem. And it was back in 2015 when I was watching my favorite alternative media creators, where they who are all libertarian guys, in fact, because that's my background as well, my politics. Mm-hmm. And they started to talk about the censorship on YouTube. And YouTube at that time I thought was a wonderful platform where anyone could go to it and get an education, get information, get thousands of dollars of valuable information for free. So it was a great leveler, fantastic way for everyone around the world to get all sorts of content at their fingertips for free. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like the direction it was going. And I thought, is there something I could do about it? And that's when I decided yes. And that was where the idea for BitChute came about. And I started in 2016 developing the prototype and launched it in 2017. And from there, it really took off like a rocket because so many people were interested in this, preserving free speech online and preserving privacy, which is our other big thing that we do at BitChute.
So you mentioned you had the idea and you're able to launch it, like within a year, it sounds like. Did you have a background in media? How did you pull that together so quickly?
So actually, my background was in telecoms, but I worked as a solution architect for large telecom companies all around the world. So I had the technical know-how. Also, my partner, Rich, he also had a very technical background. So we were equipped with the skills and the technical side to do things. I would say we saw it in those days as a very technical challenge. Everything we thought, okay, we just need to build the platform and that will be it. What we probably underestimated is that it's also a very political, very media-based challenge, and that's where we were less prepared, I would say, in the early days especially. So we got the technology off the ground. It was working great. Well, in fact, in the early days, it wasn't working so great. We put it out and had to upgrade it the next week, had to upgrade it again the next month because it was growing so fast. But yeah, that was one side of the challenge. The other side was very much political.
So let's talk about how it works and how users, content producers are more protected but by using BitChute. So just comparing, contrasting to something like YouTube. What are the key differences?
Well, it's changed a lot actually over the years. And when we started, we were using WebTorrent, which is many of your viewers might have heard of BitTorrent, which is a decentralized protocol for sharing video. We've changed that, and we're actually moving in a different decentralized direction right now. So part of it is the technology that we've used, but part of it, in fact, is just being prepared to stand up to the censors and say no. And that's something that we've done for years because, if someone doesn't, then lots of bad things will happen if free speech is ever lost, then, and privacy. So we've really had a track record now for almost 9 years of being prepared to platform everything that is important, everything, sometimes the content is very controversial. Sometimes the content is not so controversial, but we don't mind. We're very neutral at BitChute and believe that as long as something isn't breaking the law, then we will platform it and we will fight to defend it. And, that has got us in a lot of problems because we're probably the most, as a platform, we're the most deplatformed platform out there, the most demonetized, the most, I would say, even demonized platform out there from all of that, just supporting people's fundamental human rights.
Yeah, and since we're on the topic right now, let's talk about some of those attacks and how, I know Wikipedia has been one area or one tool or weapon that's been used against BitChute. So can you talk about some of those attacks?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, some of the Wikipedia stuff is atrocious. And actually, so we've probably got the worst Wikipedia record out there. But also on our board of advisors is Larry Sanger, who happens to be one of the co-founders of Wikipedia. So that's quite a juxtaposition you've got there with the worst record, and also the co-founder believes in us because I've known Larry for years and he's been a supporter of BitChute for years. But it's really been quite atrocious. Like there's just to name one of the things. So we were initially based in the UK. We're now a US company. We moved the operations to the US last year.
What was the reason, if I can just interrupt, what was the reason for the move?
Yeah, sure. So it was becoming increasingly more difficult to work in the UK. In fact, we lost our bank account going back 2 years, and we sort of bounced around from bank to bank. But we found that we were being deplatformed again and again. And eventually we just ran out of banks to try. There wasn't a single bank in the UK that would bank us. So, it's pretty difficult to run a company as it is, but when you can't get a bank account, it's nearly impossible. And then
did they attack your personal banking as well, or just the?
Not as much, but we have had personal accounts closed as well over this. And again, we're not doing anything illegal. We're not doing anything immoral. We're supporting free speech. We're supporting people's privacy. We're trying to make the world a better place by pushing these ideals. But in fact, that wasn't even the final straw. The final straw was we had insurance, basic insurance for the company that every company needs since the outset back in 2017. And for some reason, when it came up for renewal last year, the insurance company told us that they couldn't insure us anymore. They weren't more specific than that. So we thought, okay, we'll look around for another insurance company. And we found that also wasn't possible. No other insurance company in the UK would take us. We went to a specialist, and he said this is the first time he's seen this, that he couldn't find an insurance company for any amount of money. And in fact, we'd never claimed on our insurance in all that time, and we'd always made our premiums on time. So we were a very good customer, very profitable for that insurance company. They'd just taken our money and we'd never claimed. But this is what can happen, and what is many stages along in the UK, but it's happening elsewhere in the world as well. So, we've got first-hand experience of this. And this is why we moved the entire operations to the US, because in contrast, the US banking system, even though there are a lot of banks who have already deplatformed people, is a lot more decentralized. There's a lot of smaller banks that you can go to. And in fact, some of the banks welcomed us with open arms and said, we love what you're doing. We support free speech, we support privacy too. Come bank with us. So it was night and day getting out of the UK. But so that was the reason we left. But I'm very glad we did now, because the regulation in the UK has only got so much worse since then.
And so BitChute is not even available in the UK anymore. Is that right?
That's correct. So the specific reason for that is different. So there is a regulation in the UK called the Online Safety Act. And this came in, this has been coming in for years, in fact, but the powers only came into force, or started to come into force, this year. We examined this carefully, and we saw that actually it's nothing to do with safety. It's more like the Online Censorship and Surveillance Act. And even though we're a US company now, the way this legislation is written, it pulls every company under its regime, so long as they have some some availability in the UK. So that means the website can be accessed from the UK. But so this is definitely bad for UK people, because they're being censored and they're being surveilled. But it's worse than that, because it's so broad that it affects people outside the UK as well. So if a platform is now operating in the UK, it is required, it's cooperating with Ofcom, so it can be required to hand over all sorts of information, and that doesn't matter about where the user is based. They could be US based, Canadian based, UK based, it doesn't matter. So this is really a really bad precedent for the internet, something that every platform should resist. No one should expose this Orwellian law to their users, no matter where their users are in the world. And in the end, it was a very simple decision for us, actually, even though we had a very large UK user base. It came down to a matter of principle. We decided that we couldn't cooperate, we couldn't collaborate, so we had to pull out of the UK. And now the BitChute website is no longer available. When users go to the website, they see a message explaining these reasons.
Yeah, so I mean, I like the way you put it. Continuing to operate there would have literally gone against the reason why you started the company in the first place. So I think that's pretty clear and makes sense. So when we talk about BitChute, and I mean, I'll admit that, you know, Lions of Liberty, we need to get on BitChute. We need to get all of our shows on BitChute. That we've been remiss to do that, and that's something we're going to remedy quickly here. But just the features of BitChute, can you talk a little bit about what features it has? How does it compare to a Rumble or competitors?
Right. So we have video on demand. We have live streaming. We have we do have PayShoot, which is our payments platform. I guess the equivalent to Locals. We're working on making a lot of improvements to that. So it is very much similar to YouTube in terms of the feature set, where, you know, some areas where we're not quite as feature complete as YouTube. We're working hard to bring ourselves up to that to that level all the time. But yeah, it's got I would say a lot of differences to how YouTube and Rumble and other platforms work. First of all, we're by far the most free speech platform out there, and that you just have to read our terms, compare them to other platforms' terms to see that that's the case. Because we just don't believe in banning something if it's legal. But also our algorithms are very different. They're very transparent, and they don't there's not a mystery behind them. So when you see something on the trending, you know that actually has the most views. Or if you see something on the popular page, we figure that out by the channels that have the most subscribers. So this is very fair. It's an approach that people can understand. It's not a mystery. We also have no shadow banning at all across the whole platform. In fact, we back that up with a $10,000 no shadow banning guarantee. So if anyone believes that they've been shadow banned and they can prove it, we will pay them $10,000. And we're so determined to have a platform that's fair, that's private. That's another area where we differ. We offer a higher level of privacy than other platforms. So you're not being surveilled. We only keep the information that we need to run the platform, whereas other platforms are sucking up everything, because actually information is very valuable today. A lot of platforms have that as their business model. We don't. So our preferred business model is subscriptions. We do also have some advertising, but we don't just suck up information for the sake of it. We limit that to small amounts so that we can, preserve people's privacy. And, we encourage them to preserve their privacy in other ways, like using VPNs, whereas other platforms are trying to shut that down because it makes their information gathering less effective. We go the opposite way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you look at these other companies like Facebook and Google, and their lifeblood is the user information. That's where they build their advertising models off of, and essentially, the user becomes the what's the saying?
If you're not paying for it, you are the product.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're not paying for it, you are the product. That's it. So just like talking about privacy right now, where we are in this moment, it's kind of been interesting to watch as you kind of had Donald Trump get elected on this, sort of wave of, people who wanted privacy, who felt like the previous administration had invaded rights. If you go back to COVID and different things, forced vaccination and different things like that, people felt like their, sort of rights were being infringed on. And you saw what happened with Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media sites kicking President Trump off of them towards the end of his term, and lots of people getting deplatformed. It seems like with Elon buying Twitter, in the past 2 years or whenever it was, it's a little bit better. It's not to focus the conversation entirely on Twitter, but it seems like more people at least are cognizant of their privacy than maybe a few years before. Where do you see that kind of the privacy conversation? Do you think people need to be more concerned about their privacy right now? Do you think things are trending in a worse direction?
I think there's been some recent developments, which actually I've made a video about, a mini documentary, which is very frightening in terms of if you go back to March, Trump signed an executive order, which didn't seem like much at the time, but he enabled information sharing from departments like the IRS, like the HHS, various departments which would normally secure Americans' information records very securely and only use it for those purposes. But actually Trump has started to allow companies, in fact, the company that has been selected is Palantir, to process those records. So I see this as a very concerning development because there's already massive amounts of privacy invasions. Right now, your phone is telling people where you are. The apps on your phone can see what you're buying. Your car can reveal lots of information about you. If you're working out, your health bracelet is sharing that information with companies. All of this information is being gathered up. But a missing piece from this puzzle was people's tax records, people's financial records, the information that only government used to have access to. And this is changing. With this recent change and Palantir having access to not only the information that they get from data brokers, but also information that they can only get from the government. And, this is really something that, in my opinion, the Trump administration shouldn't be doing at all. They're able to create complete profiles on people. And this is very dangerous because with this level of profiles on US citizens, they're able to, whether you trust them or not, you might think that the Trump administration would never do anything malicious or anything to restrict people's ability to protest or anything like that. But they're building a system that could be used by future governments to restrict people in so many different ways that it's extremely dangerous. And I'm very concerned about this, and that's why I decided to make a mini documentary about it, to expose this and tell people what they should be doing to try and avoid it. And so this is the biggest concern I see right now in the privacy area.
Where do you think that is coming from? Who's the architect, or who do you think is directing this behind the scenes? Because I mean, like you said there, I mean, is Donald Trump going to weaponize this? Who knows? Maybe he will, but probably not. But who's after Trump? So who's taking this really long-term view that is setting these wheels in motion, do you think?
Well, I think governments always push for more control, and it's our job, as individuals, to push back, to make sure that they don't get it. I think people have become a bit complacent in recent years, and I don't see like a more sinister thing than that. It's just that governments always do this. That's what they always strive for, to have more control over people, to prevent them from protesting. So a good example of this was in Canada just not too long ago. In the last 2 years, you may remember the trucker protests. The Canadian government was able to shut down fundraising campaigns for those protesters. They were able to, in fact, stop people who were donating from to the protesters, to stop their donations reaching them. So this is like a very recent thing that we know happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that could happen in the US as well with this, and even more with this much greater level of control over not just your online data, not just your mobile data, but all of your data, all of your personal records that government holds. And yeah, it is the Trump administration doing this, but I think all governments, this is like their fantasy, their dream to have this sort of level of control in place. As you can tell, I'm a bit libertarian and not so fond of large governments.
Yeah, neither am I. And it seems like no matter who is elected, at least in the U.S., no matter which side, the government just gets bigger. It does. There's no stopping it. So when we talk about privacy, and I do agree with you. I think people have become complacent and almost hopeless in the sense that, it's kind of like, how people say, well, if I have nothing to hide, then who cares? And they're not thinking ahead. They're not thinking ahead to how this data can be used against them, even if they have nothing to hide. How it can be weaponized against them, weaponized against certain choices, or as a way to influence what you're allowed to eat, or if you're only allowed to have, if you start getting into talking about how this could be paired with like a central bank digital currency. Oh, you've had your allotment of steak for the week. Sorry, you can't have any more. You can't buy any more steak. So it is scary when you start to think about how all these different pieces can fit together. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on a potential central bank digital currency, and then how, the financial system can then be interlocked with a surveillance state to further infringe upon liberty.
That is, yeah, incredibly scary. That I'm a big proponent of cash. I think everyone should be using cash as often as they can. It's not always possible, but at least where it is possible, use cash, because central bank digital currencies will, and this is not just me saying this is out of the mouth of bankers in the UK have said this, and all around the world, that they will be able to not only control the amount of money that you have, but how you spend it. And the Bank of England gave an example of how they could restrict children from using their money on too many sweets. And I think the government sees us all as children a little bit. So if they don't want us spending, if they decided we've had enough red meat for the month, or if we've driven too far in our car, they will have this control if a central bank currency gets into place, a level of control that they've never had before. So this is just another piece of the puzzle. I think it all knits together when they've got all of this information that they're scooping up, buying from private companies. I mean, this is another thing that the government, at least in the US, you've got the Fourth Amendment. You shouldn't be subject to unreasonable searches and seizures. If the government wants to come into your home, they need a warrant, right? Mm-hmm. But what they're doing now to get around that is they're just buying the data. So they're buying the data that they've probably already collected, and they can do this legally right at this moment, buying it from private companies. So they're using all of your social media history, everything you've posted on Facebook, everything you've tweeted, and they're combining it with all these other records. And that, combined with a central bank digital currency, would be just, end game if we let it get to that stage. So now is really the time to resist.
Yeah, so social credit married with financial credit, married with a surveillance state, a recipe for disaster for sure. Where do you see, I mean, when you look into the next 5-10 years, obviously people like yourself, entrepreneur, innovator, you're finding ways to fight back against this, give people, another way to keep their content private and safe. Are you optimistic about the future? Do you think more people like yourself are going to step forward and take these risks to guarantee our privacy?
Well, I think people have to act. I think we really have to sound the alarm bells right now, and people have to start taking personal responsibility, because actually there's a lot they can do, and they need to realize what's going on. So we need to get this information to as many people as possible. There's been studies, after the Snowden revelations, there were studies showing that just by surveilling people, once people realize that they've been surveilled, they become more cautious about what they search for online. They stop looking up mental health issues. They stop looking up certain types of politics. So we need to be conscious about how this is changing us and resist that. But if we do, there's a lot of simple things we can start to do that will really start winding this back. For example, if you're messaging right now, you should be using private messages. It's a very simple thing to do. Get all your friends onto private messaging. Don't let the government snoop in on what you're saying. That's one data point you can take away from
best
them.
Private messenger, in your opinion?
Signal's quite a good one, I believe. Yeah, you use privacy-focused browsers. So Brave is a good example of that. Use cache, I've said already, as much as you can. That reduces the amount of footprint you've got as on financial transactions. Use a VPN. That's very important. We're about to launch a VPN actually, so that everyone who becomes a BitChute subscriber will get a VPN, because we just believe in this so much. But you don't have to use ours. Just use any VPN. Get your family onto a VPN. If someone's not technical, do them a favor. Go around to their house and show them how to use it. Buy them a VPN for Christmas or for their birthday or for whatever. Because we have to start doing these things now, taking back our privacy. And I believe that's really achievable and really doable if we just make those small efforts. A lot of the time it's not a big effort, but also I think we do need to put more pressure on our elected officials and get them to enact laws that will start to reverse some of this. Like a good example is government shouldn't be able to use data that they're buying from third parties that they otherwise would need a warrant for if they had to get it from you directly. They just shouldn't be able to do that. But right now they can for a loophole. So we need to apply pressure. We need to take individual responsibility. And if that starts to happen and we start to spread the word, then I'm optimistic about the future. If otherwise, it's going to just get worse.
Yeah, I mean, people have to step up. I 100% agree with you. And I like how you keep drilling home the point of using cash. It makes me sick when I go to all these different places in the US, different amusement parks or baseball games, where they say no cash accepted. That's not good. And if we don't start pushing back and using cash places that we can, so businesses understand that they have a certain percentage of cash customers, then they'll, if they have, 15-20% of their customers prefer cash, then they'll keep accepting cash. So that's the market at work, right? But before I let you go, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, I was just going to agree. Yeah, if 15-20% of their customers just walked away from the door, they would reverse that decision the next day, and that problem would be solved. Right. So yeah, we've got to take responsibility.
100%. We're about out of time here, Ray. Before I let you go, can you just if you want to drill home on any points once again here, or give your plugs and tell people where they can find BitChute or anything else that you have, the documentary that you referenced earlier too?
Yeah, so BitChute.com, please give it a try as a YouTube alternative. It's a platform that doesn't spy on you. It's a platform that supports your free speech. And if people want to check out my documentary, it's coming out in a few days' time. That's BitChute.com/Ray.
Awesome. Well, Ray Vahey, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me. Me too.
All right, that is a wrap for today's show. At the top of the show, I forgot to mention my favorite coffee, Fox and Sons Coffee. My good friend Stephen Fox put this company together to help to show his sons, to teach his sons about entrepreneurship and, of course, selling excellent quality coffee that I love and you'll love too if you try it. So go to FoxN, that's the letter N, sons.com, and you can get 15% off an order of $40 or more if you use promo code John at checkout at foxnsons.com. The only other thing I have, guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's interview. Really important interview, one you might want to go back and listen to again, and probably you should share it with a friend. So try to do that. Try to share this episode with a friend. As Ray talked about, really, really important issue. And I think too many people have already given up on their privacy. They're like, oh, well, my information's already everywhere. Who cares? Well, it's going to start affecting them in some very negative ways, and we need to start pushing back. So share this episode and subscribe to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Subscribe to our new politics podcast. That's politics spelled with tick, like the blood-sucking insect. And join the Lions of Liberty Pride, where you can get some discounts on merchandise, and you can get our bonus content either over at Locals or on Patreon. With that being said, that's all I got for today. I will see you all next week with another great interview. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.